The time has come to crack open the ancient tomes once again, to visit a land of myth, magic, and silliness. It's time to look more into the races of Dungeons and Dragons. Hello everyone, I'm Kestrel McKnight.
And I'm Tim Gawain, and you've joined the party of Pillars of Adventuring.
Last week we talked about the primary 4 races you'll find in the Player's Handbook, their stats, and some basic lore, and we are thrilled to talk about the next 5 out of the Player's Handbook, as well as a bit of their lore. But first, we have announcements.
Yes, we are both big into the lore and the background of D&D, and we're going to be launching soon some episodes that will be talking about the lore of Toril and of Faerun in general. These are going to be for flavor and helping you build up your campaigns with tips and secrets of the world, and helping you as players, as well as the DMs, to navigate the world while not having to invent everything, especially from scratch. So this will not be a separate channel, but instead it will be a new feature to the one that we're already doing, and we'll be running that very soon. So keep your eyes open for that.
That one's likely not going to be a live stream like we're doing here, unless we decide to otherwise. But we may do question and answers on that later, but definitely, yeah. Definitely want to get the stuff on that. Lore is huge, lore is big, and there's only a couple places that really dive deep into it, and we want to be one of those. Now, if you would like to support us, there are a few things you can do. First, follow our Twitch TV, so my personal Twitch TV /Kestrel_McKnight for our live broadcasts. I host this little extravaganza live each week, as well as our live D&D sessions over the weekends. The second thing, and equally important, is to like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell in the YouTube video. This way you won't miss a minute of our advice or content, and you will be among the first to know when a new video drops.
Speaking of being among the first, you can also become a patron at patreon.com/Pillars of Adventuring, all one word. And so check that out. Now, we have pretty lofty goals, to be honest, for what we want, so that we can help you all, and your support will allow us to do that. Honestly, in order to make this full-time for us, we're looking for the Patreon to run about $4,000 a month, because this is going to help us improve the quality and the speed as to how and when we put out our content.
And it's great. We've got a little bit of something for everybody on there. So patreon.com/Pillars of Adventuring, all one word still. It means a lot. Just being here and watching, that's huge too. So if you can't donate or don't want to donate but still want to help out, easy thing is spread the word. Share our videos, share the Twitch.
Right.
That's a big thing. Now, without further ado, the following races are more uncommon, meaning that outside of the major cities, these races can be met with suspicion, have a harder time blending in, disguise and deception can, at the DM's discretion, be made harder. These 5 races that we have left to talk about are the Dragonborn, the Gnome, the Tiefling, and the Half-Orc, and the Half-Elf, not in that order. I know I said 4 last week. That's my fault. I can't count. For that, I apologize. But I do not apologize for the Dragonborn. This is not like the Dragonborn in Skyrim. These are actually humanoid dragons, not humans that have dragon ability. They are born of the dragon, as the name suggests, through a process, and as to how that process happened is up for debate. Some say it the draconic gods forging them for a servant class of true dragons, or shock troops for them. The Dragonborn have finally made their way to the material plane, and thus have started carving their own path. The Dragonborn's scale will reflect their draconic ancestry, though their personality doesn't always align with the traits of the true dragon they descend from. To a Dragonborn, the clan is the most important thing, more than even their own life, and more than the gods themselves. Their clan is paramount. Each Dragonborn knows their place within the clan, and honor demands maintaining the bounds of the position and upholding their duties within it. They also have an innate drive for self improvement, which is reflected in the self sufficiency of their race. As a whole, they hate to fail and strive for excellence in everything they do. Though while prideful, they aren't so proud as to not accept help when they need it. Failing because of pride when someone, be they mortal, divine, or even not Dragonborn, is lunacy to the Dragonborn. And though they tend to be insular, keeping to themselves, right, and going to other Dragonborn first, they do reach out to other races and peoples beyond their clan.
Yes, one of my favorite Dragonborns is in the Brimstone Angels series. Farida and Havilar's father, Clanless Mahen, and he is one of the coolest characters I think I've read about. And again, kind of prideful, but not so proud as to not ask for help from his tiefling foundling daughters that he raised. So as a player, as a Dragonborn, your heritage is shown in practical ways. You get a +2 to strength and a +1 to charisma. Young Dragonborns grow quickly, walking within hours of being a hatchling. And then by age 3, they look to be about the size of a 10-year-old human and reach adulthood at the age of 15. They live to be around 80 years old, so they're pretty close to human as far as lifespan. Dragonborn tend to go to extremes. They pick sides in the cosmic war between good and evil, and rarely do they seek a middle ground. They usually side either with Bahamut or Tiamat. So most Dragonborn in Faerun are good, though those who follow Tiamat are absolutely terrible, and they're typically villains. The Dragonborn are generally taller and heavier than humans, the shortest among them being about 6 feet tall. Some have been as tall as 8 feet, but they average around 250 pounds. They're medium creatures with a walking speed of about 30 feet. Dragonborn do get a breath weapon that they can use that ties into their draconic ancestry, whether chromatic or metallic.
Check the table on those, because we could have gone through all of them, but there's a table. Please check that. It's much easier to reference.
It very much is. And this attack actually levels up with you. So, and the save difficulty is 8 plus your constitution plus your proficiency bonus. It will do 2d6 damage until the 6th level, and then it gets even stronger from there. You also have damage resistance, the same as your draconic lineage.
So if you have the black dragon, resistance to the poison, bronze dragon, resistance to lightning, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Next, love this. The Devil Child, they're often called. And in one campaign, it was a homebrew campaign, we were called the Vexies, the Vexed.
Makes sense.
That's tieflings. Tieflings are outside of the main cities treated with mistrust, fear, derision, and more often than not, absolute hatred. To twist the knife even further, every single tiefling knows that it's because of some pact that was struck with the dark power, usually Asmodeus. Um, and that is the reason they're cursed. Their appearance and their nature are not directly their fault, but the result of an ancient sin that someone in their family did, which the next generations are doomed to suffer. Tieflings are derived from human bloodlines, and I use that in the loosest of terms, actually. Um, they still look human mostly. Their skin color can be the whole array of human tones, or they may have varying shades of red or purple in the mixed. Um, my bard, for instance, that I play in Tyranny of Dragons, and all tieflings have large horns, which can take various shapes, and well, they kind of make hats damn near impossible.
They, they
Pretty,
don't they don't account for horns when making hats.
yeah. Um, and such as my tiefling bard has ram's horns that come out and curl around his head. So um, they also have very thick tails that can be up to 5 feet long, and they have been known to lash quite a bit when they get a little nervous or upset. Their canine teeth are sharper, and their eyes are solid colors: black, red, white, silver, or gold. And they have no discernible pupil or sclera. Um, because of their outcast nature, they tend to be pretty self reliant and independent. Um, they have no homeland. Their families have been marked as betrayers, though they are typically some of the most loyal of companions. Skladba will give his life for the group that he's traveling with. Um, most tieflings do grow up to be petty thieves or other criminals, and unless they're taken in, many go on to become something even darker due to circumstance. Now, with Skladba, he was raised in a family that loved him. He was raised in a nomadic family, trained in the ways of bardism, and basically, we call them Stroth in our campaign, but basically, he's a gypsy. And so he was raised with good upbringing, to be honest.
Now, it is important to make a distinction between tieflings and Cambrian. And there's a lot of confusion in there, and I spent a lot of time researching on it. And it can be up to DM discretion, because there is no clear and cut reason for it. Tieflings, by most accounts, are not created by breeding with a devil or a demon, but a stain upon the soul based on a demonic act. So it's a magical curse that goes through the bloodline.
Mhm.
Cambrians, they're bred. They're half-breed devil human, or other creature. Usually an incubus or a succubus seduced a mortal, and then the half-devil is born, and they tend to make up a large amount of Avernus, because, well, that's where they be. So, if there is a element in your campaign that you want to have that tie in and have something with blood lying through, try not to get that muddled, because you may come up with some canon confusion. Tieflings do get a +1 to their intelligence, and get a +2 on their charisma. Now, I hear the confusion already. Why do you get +2 on charisma if people hate you? It's because of the infernal magic in their blood, that gives them, that draws that spell. So sorcerers, bards, they have their spellcasting ability as charisma. That's why they get +2 on the charisma. Tieflings age the same as humans, but they do live a little bit longer due to their infernal ancestry. And while tieflings aren't inherently evil, they often find themselves because of the external sources. Evil or not, they tend more often than not to be lawful. There are, of course, exceptions to every rule. Tieflings are medium-sized creatures, no matter how fat they are, with weight and proportions similar to humans, and also have that base speed of 30 feet per round. They do get dark vision, much like the elves we talked about, so dim light same as bright light for 60 feet, and darkness will be dim light for 60 feet. You are naturally resistant to fire damage, and you know the Thaumaturgy cantrip, and can cast it at will. We'll talk more about that when we get into our magic and all that fun stuff. You can cast Hellish Rebuke at 3rd level, and can cast Darkness at 5th. Regardless of what class you have, you get all those back after a long rest. They just are in your blood, your charisma being that spellcasting ability, much like sorcerers. And again, we'll be touching on the classes soon. Not only do you speak Common, but you are innately able to read, write, and speak Infernal due to the magical nature of your bloodline. Now, this brings us to... I hate these little guys. Honestly, this was a really hard one for me to write. I know a bit about them, but I have a unreasonable dislike and hatred for gnomes. I don't know exactly what it is, but they bother me. Goblins are often considered and referred to as a counterpart to the dwarves. So you see, like polar opposites, you get goblins and dwarves, opposite opposed. You get orcs and elves, opposing opposites. Although with the introduction of Drow, you have that, and then the orcs and humans were opposing opposites. Gnomes are... While the gnomes do come in conflict with goblins, of the civilized quote-unquote races, I would put gnomes diametrically opposed to kobolds.
I happen to like both races. I love kobolds. In our
You love kobolds because of Deacon.
Yeah, well, Deacon's a cool kobold, but he's not the first kobold that I've ever been involved in a campaign. But so gnomes, they stand about 3 feet tall and they weigh about 40 to 50 pounds, which may actually sound familiar. But beyond artificial exterior traits to my darling little halflings, there are some attitude and origin differences involved. Gnomes are jovial and work to live life to the fullest. They have a lifespan of upwards of 500 years, but they talk and act like even with all that time, it's not enough. They surround themselves with trinkets, shiny things, mostly in an unconscious callback to the race being born of gemstones near the dawn of mortality. Gnomes tend to speak fast, as if they're rushing to get all of their thoughts out, but are also incredibly attentive listeners. Gnomes make excellent, albeit slightly annoying, cheerleaders. I happen to like gnomes. I think they're adorable.
I think my big problem with them is that no matter how much energy I have, I will never have as much energy as a gnome. Now, gnomes do tend to live closer to the surface than dwarves. Their cities often bleeding out from the hills and caves into wooded areas. If there was some strange hybrid of a dwarf and elf, it would probably look an awful lot like a gnome. Hyperactive little buggers. They're also quite industrious. They're working as engineers, gemcutters, sages, and tinkers. In canon, the first artificers were actually gnomes. And you'll often see them bleeding the science into the magical world of Dungeons and Dragons. A gnome's desire to see and experience everything lends them quite easily to the adventurer's life.
Now, your average gnome gets a bonus, a +2 bonus to their intelligence. They mature at the same rate as humans. Well, physically, anyway. Most are expected to settle down in an adult life.
Heavy air quotes.
Yes. Around 40 years of age. They can live anywhere from 350 to 500 years. Gnomes are often good, and they vary between lawful and chaotic. So any one of those three, lawful, neutral, or chaotic, they can be. And it usually depends on what career they choose. They're
Example, if they're going to be an engineer, they're typically more lawful. Of course, if they go with the artistry side of the gnome world, they go more chaotic.
Right. They are small-sized creatures like the halflings, so they have a 25-foot walking speed. They also get dark vision, and they get an advantage on all intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws against magic. And you get to know Gnomish and Common. Now we're going to talk about the two main types of the gnome.
The forest gnome has a natural knack for a loot. You're faster, you're sneakier, and possibly the most reclusive of all the D&D core playable races. It is not uncommon for the inexperienced adventurer who somehow accidentally discovers one of their forest communities to mistake these gnomes for part of the Fae folk. Forest gnomes get a +1 to their dexterity. They will know the minor illusion cantrip regardless of class, and they can natively speak with small beasts like squirrels, rabbits, badgers without having to cast any spells. They just can talk to small forest animals and create a small furry spy network.
Then we have the rock gnomes. These are the more common gnomes that you'll find around Faerun. They're natural tinkerers and are often inventors. They do get a +1 to their constitution score. They also get a bonus on history checks related to magic items, alchemical objects, or even technological devices. And they get double proficiency in those. You also will have proficiency with tinker's tools and can even make clockwork devices if you want to spend that time in the materials to make them.
And they're fun little knickknacks. Give you a little bit of flavor. But now,
well, I mean, in my one campaign, I'm playing a halfling, and we have a gnome tinkerer, and he tinkered with my halfling's short bow and gave him rechargeable shot, so I never have to use an arrow as long as I have that little room covered thing around my short bow. So yeah. Gnome tinkerers are not bad.
No, they're not
bad to have around.
They do have uses when they're not blowing shit up. But now, on to the half-breed. We're going to go over the first one fairly quickly because it is honestly fairly similar to the elf, because it's the half-elf. It is the race when you want to be an elf, but don't want to commit fully to the centuries of life. Half-elves look elven to humans, but human to elves. Despite that, they're not out of place in either world. They typically are diplomats, scholars, and public officials, easily feeling at home in any community, really. And while not uncommon, there are secluded pockets where people wouldn't even know that a half-elf was possible. The half-elf in those areas, they may exist years without seeing another of their kind. but you will frequently see half-elves in the major cities like Waterdeep, Neverwinter, Baldur's Gate, um, places like that. But because of their great abilities, they rarely go out into the rural area. There is a slight issue with their natural great ambassador ability. The only group that they can't negotiate between effectively, ironically, are the elves and humans. While they do get the best of both of their parent races, the half-elves, either the elf or the human, will think the half-elf is favoring the other side in negotiation.
So, mechanically speaking, half elves get a +2 to charisma, and they get a +1 to 2 other stats of your choice. Half elves are about the same size as humans, ranging between 5 and 6 feet tall. They are medium-sized creatures with a walking speed of 30 feet. They also get dark vision like elves, and they get to keep the Fey ancestry traits of the elves, and they can learn to trance like the elves, the reverie that I talked about last week, if the DM allows it. Half elves mature to adulthood around 20, but they live much shorter lives than elves do, living to be about 180 years old. As a half elf, you gain proficiency of 2 skills of your choice. You also get to know Elvish, Common, and 1 other language.
And I want to make a point there that gaining additional proficiencies, that's making my necromancer OP. So I have a half-elf necromancer that I just started playing, and he has a sage background, which we'll get into those after we go through classes. So we have sage, half-elf, and then the proficiencies that come with being a wizard. I've got like 6 different proficiencies, not counting that I had a really good roll for stats with him. There's virtually nothing I can't do. For what I want him to do anyway. It is so important to keep that in mind. If you're looking for a jack of all trades character, that additional 2 proficiencies right off the bat puts you a step above most.
Yeah, that's true. So now we'll talk about the other half.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, I kind of like this this race, although I have not ever played one as of yet. Half orcs. They are the flip side of the half elves. Now there are several ways that the half orc could come about, be it the magical union by a warlock fighting to a standstill between warring tribes of orcs and humans, or other, shall we say, less pleasant methods.
Yeah, we'll just gloss over that.
Yeah, half orcs are brutal. They mainly live in the orc tribes, as the human and other civilized societies treat them with disdain. To this end, they often become adventurers to perform great feats before becoming accepted. Half orcs tend to have grayish skin tone, sloping foreheads, jutting jaws, and prominent teeth. They have towering builds between 5 and 7 feet. Their orcish heritage really isn't that hard to see. Orcs use scarring to denote status among their clan. Certain scars show power, but most half orcs will show the scars of, well, slavery. I really do tend to like half orcs. I've played in a couple of campaigns with half orcs. I'm in one right now um, with an NPC who's an half orc barbarian, and she's incredible. So I like them because yes, they are brutal. They're probably more fit to play barbarians or to be barbarians. Um,
Usually
simply for that
heavy
reason.
in the martial classes. It does work very well, and in a few moments we'll get with why that works well. But the thing I like with the half orc is, much like tieflings, it is a built-in redemption arc story,
Mm-hmm.
showing how I can be better than I was before,
Mm-hmm.
or proving society wrong about what they think of.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, in order to kind of sort of understand half orc, let's look at orcs to begin with. Orcs were created by the one eyed god Grumsh, and even orcs who turn away from his worship can't escape his influence. So, the same is true for half orcs. Um, though it is tempered by their human side, some half orcs will hear the whisper of Grumsh calling them to unleash the rage that lies within. Others fall easily to their bloodlust. While not evil in nature, they have a struggle with the savagery and darkness within. Half orcs, when living in human lands, either are in tribes outside of everything or they live in the slums of the cities. Life pretty much is difficult for a half orc.
Now, playing at the half orc, you get an automatic +2 to your strength and +1 to constitution. So again, leaning heavily into those martial classes, paladins, warriors, um, even barbarians. They age faster than humans, reaching maturity around age 14, and living to be no more than 75 years old, not counting death by violent means. If they grow to full age, 75 years old. They tend towards chaotic alignments, and are not strongly compelled towards good. Most half-orcs will either be on the self-serving evil side or stay in neutral. Orcs, half-orcs, again, they're medium creatures. Most playable races are. They also have movement speed of 30. Most playable races do. Now, they do get dark vision as well, but now we actually get to the real interesting part. Half-orcs have a proficiency with intimidation due to their menacing stature. And here's the really slightly overpowered thing about half-orcs in the front lines of combat. The first time when an attack would take them down to half, or take them down to 0 hit points, they're not dropped to 0. They just get dropped to 1. It can only be used once without a long rest, but it can be the difference between losing a fight and squeaking out a win at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Half-orcs also get stronger criticals, getting to roll the damage die twice on any melee critical in addition to normal critical damage. So let me put that into perspective again. You have your normal attack damage. You get to roll your attack damage again, and then you roll your critical damage. You're basically getting half of an attack extra. It's
kind of why I like Aaron in my other campaign, because Aaron can slay.
I almost pulled Destin as a half-orc, but I didn't like the character I was coming up with the half orc, so I decided I'd go with the human.
So, there you have all the core races from the Player's Handbook. There are, of course, other races that you can be in many of the other books. Let's see, I think it's the Sword Coast.
There's Sword Coast, there's Eberron, which gets slept on a lot.
Mhm.
The only thing that people remember at Eberron is the Warforged, but
Yeah.
Benku are overpowered, and no one uses them. They are way OP. Bolos Guide to Monsters has some player classes.
Yes.
Player class the Kobold. I believe this is where the Genensai are from too, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. I believe they are.
Um,
And Wildmount also has added. Wildmount is new. It's based on Critical Role, but it is still Wizards of the Coast canon now.
And there's another one. I forget which one gets us.
There are a few.
The
I've got them.
Minotaurs, but
Yeah, I've got them on D&D Beyond. But
we will dive into those later.
Yeah, just for fun.
We're going to come back and circle back to a lot of the stuff after we get through the core mechanics and build on everything.
So, just so that you know, anything else would be even stranger to see in the average world of Faerun or Toril, and in the average campaign in Faerun. So you should definitely play accordingly to keep things interesting. There really is no sense in playing an extremely rare race and ignoring the fact that that race is unusual. You can play an odd race. I mean, I play tieflings a lot, and that really is probably the most unusual race that I've played. But I also understand that the NPCs are not going to accept me quite as well because I'm a tiefling and my character reacts accordingly. So that being said, till next time, I'm Tim Gwaine.
And I'm Kester McKnight.
And you've been watching Pillars of Adventuring. May the rolls ever be in your favor.